I thought I was living my fairy tale, and really I was living a nightmare.
I just thought I was messed up and there was no hope for me.
I didn't have a lot of normal jaunts. I remember being terrified, just terrified at what was going to happen. And they weren't normal, it wasn't right.
Welcome to a special documentary on human trafficking. I'm Stella Daskalakis, and I'm standing on the Montana-North Dakota border, home of the Bakken, at one end of the human trafficking chain.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Greg Lamont. We've traveled all the way down to the U.S. border with Mexico. On that side of the fence is Tijuana, Mexico. On this side, San Isidro, California. Human trafficking. The battle against it is worldwide, and the reality is Montana is not an island in this war. This is where it starts in the U.S., as tens of thousands are smuggled across the border every year. The traffickers and the human slaves they control end up in all parts of the country, including right here in Montana.
It's modern-day slavery. It runs the gambit of labor slavery, sex trafficking, any situation where we have someone who is manipulated or coerced or held against their will or made to do something that a normal person wouldn't otherwise do. We tend to think of things like human trafficking as being their problem, someone else's issue, particularly internationally in third world countries, for instance. But it can happen in your own backyards. Unfortunately, Montana is not immune to it.
Human trafficking conjures up stereotypical images of women and kids being rounded up in trucks and shipped off to other locations. But that can't be further from the truth.
It's a reality. It's the modern day slavery that is making a lot of criminals rich.
Summer Stephan is the Chief Deputy District Attorney for San Diego County, which borders Mexico. She sees what human trafficking has become.
The profit is so high. It is the second largest criminal industry in the world, tied with guns. In fact, very close to narcotics trafficking.
According to the United Nations, human trafficking generates up to $32 billion a year worldwide. More than 600,000 to 800,000 men, women, and children trafficked across international borders each year. 80% are women. Overall, 50% are minors.
Gangs and organized crime have discovered that this is a very lucrative area and one that they can get away with more because the victims don't self-report. They don't identify themselves as victims.
I have a business proposition for you.
You're talking 24 hours a day. It's gonna cost you. You could get 1 million girls free.
I want a professional.
This isn't glamorous. This isn't the client list or pretty woman. There is no limousine that's gonna pull up and marry one of these girls. These girls are gonna likely die of disease. They're likely gonna die by age 40. It was still shocking to me to understand that someone could be enslaving a human being, exploiting them for sex or labor day after day.
Most organizations battling human trafficking agree sexual exploitation is the largest portion, not just of women, but of children as well.
If you look for it, you're going to find it.
Is it more pervasive than you would have imagined?
I think so.
Juan Jacobo runs the Human Trafficking Task Force for the Department of Homeland Security. The crime is now only second to drug trafficking and tied with gun running, which comes as no surprise to him.
They don't have to buy new drugs or guns and then have to worry about being arrested with those things and losing the commodity. With the girls, It's something that they can use over and over. They're never with the person when they're committing the sex act, so it's a huge profit for them. Some of these girls are making $5,000, $10,000 a night for these pimps, and these pimps keep all of the money and the girl gets nothing.
According to the World Bank, a woman forced into sex trafficking can earn a pimp $67,000 a year. Just one woman.
PIMP, the acronym, put in my pocket, that's one of the dominant acronyms I've heard, right? So if she's in my pocket, she's under my control. If she's out of my pocket, she's no longer under my control.
Dr. Jamie Gates currently studies human trafficking, prostitutes, and pimps, and he agrees with law enforcement as to why trafficking continues to grow and may surpass drugs.
Drugs, guns, commodities that are tangible material, they're sold, they're used up, they're given away, they're like guns could be sold again, but human beings can be used again and again and again. And so it's sort of at one level an almost inexhaustible commodity, right? And so in that sense, a person is not just sold once, then they're sold for sex many times in a week.
The traffickers, well, they come in all forms, not just individual pimps.
The degree of collaboration between gang members across territories for the sake of making money in sex trafficking, the range of communities, if sex trafficking and prostitution was more dominant amongst one type of gang, now it's across all of them. It seems to have spread as a strategy.
Dr. Gates says he can understand why it has spread like a virus.
So there doesn't even need to be deep gang infrastructure in a particular area for some folks who are well organized to figure out, hey, that's a place that law enforcement isn't paying particular attention. Why don't we go to Billings, Montana and set up shop there for a while?
I was coerced into believing that it was the thing to do, to keep a roof over my head or food in my stomach.
11 years old. This is when you first prostituted. And who told you to do it?
My mother. My mother asked me, and I can vividly remember, like step by step, my mother and I got a ride from one of her tricks, and she said that she was on her cycle. And she looked at me and she said, baby, I'm on my cycle, but we need the money. I need you to do this so that we can have some money so we can eat. It'll only be this time. And it didn't end there. My mom stopped. And I began to do it so that she could get high, have food, have a room.
There's an assumption that prostitution is easy money, that it's a victimless crime, that people say it's the oldest profession instead of the oldest oppression, as survivors say about it.
Dr. Melissa Farley, who studies prostitution and human trafficking, says Amber's tale is all too familiar.
One person has almost all the power. The other person is extremely vulnerable by virtue of their marginalization on the basis of sex, ethnicity, and poverty.
You think it's cool, you think it's, oh man, I'm riding around in cars, I'm making big money. He's spending all this money on me. Well, guess what? He did the same for me. He also gave me a black eye, a bruised face, busted up jaw, 6 fractured ribs, 2 broken, and I lost my 2 children in a brutal beating because I thought he loved me.
During that time, Amber says there was money, more than she ever knew.
Over $1 million.
Where is that money?
Gone. In everybody else's pocket but mine.
Amber has spent the last few years trying to get clean and sober, and not just for herself.
It's so hard not to fall back into that old way of life. You know, that old comfortable blanket that you've carried around for 20 some odd years. I mean, I've been in the game since I was 11. You know, I just recently got out. I won't do it. You know why? It could play a great part in not getting my daughter back. It played a great part in me going back to the use of substances to fulfill that emptiness that I feel once I go out there on the streets and I sell my body for 5 to a dime.
Even with that goal, Amber still struggles with everyday life.
31 years old and don't know where the hell to go. Don't know what to do. Don't know how to get a job. Don't know how to do this. Don't know how to do that. It's more discouraging than frustrating. You know, every time I get shot down, it just discourages me more. You know, knowing that the streets are always there. You know, and I hate to say it like that, but that's just the reality of it.
When we return to Stopping Trafficking, battle against modern-day slavery, one of the main factors driving human trafficking here in Montana.
We know what's going on, and we know that because we are arresting people who are involved in the sex trade.